Well, Joe Biden's working hard over the last 24 hours or so, not even since O.J. Simpson died. He's working hard for the O.J. Simpson was a not guilty man crowd. They've really put that one into overdrive over the last 21 hours or so. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's great to be here on KCMO 95.7 FM as we get to the end of the week. So O.J. Simpson, it was announced at the end of the show yesterday, died from cancer. Now, this came down at about 9:40 yesterday, so it was at the very end of our show. And, I wondered what a lot of people in politics and media were going to say about it. But I didn't expect this from the White House press secretary on the podium yesterday.
Was there any reaction from the president to O.J. Simpson's death? Do you know if they ever crossed paths? If so, how, when?
So I'll say this, our thoughts are with his families during this difficult time, obviously with his family and loved ones. And I'll say this, I know that they have asked for some privacy, and so we're going to respect that. I'll just leave it there.
Thoughts are with the family during the difficult time. That's all you got. That's it for Karine Jean-Pierre on O.J. Simpson dying from cancer technically 2 days ago now at the age of 76. Boy, we have still not received a statement from the White House on the death of Laken Riley. You know, she's the young girl in Georgia who was killed by an illegal immigrant when she went out for a run. Literally, you can't get that from the White House. But you can get a statement saying our thoughts and prayers are with the family of O.J. Simpson. We haven't gotten anything on Jonathan Diller, have we? The cop who lost his life, New York City police detective who lost his life in a traffic stop a couple of weeks back. What word can you use other than appalling? It is appalling at this point. I mean, clearly Karine Jean-Pierre was all prepared for that, right? All right, they're going to ask about O.J. Let's get a statement for O.J. Well, our thoughts and prayers are with the family right now during this difficult time. Boy, it's been a difficult time for hundreds of millions of Americans the last 3 years. I'll tell you that right now. And it certainly has been a very difficult time for other people who are very prominent, who actually are innocent victims who did nothing wrong, not murderers. And instead, we get the condolences for O.J., but we don't get the condolences for Laken Riley or Jonathan Diller. It says a lot about the people in charge when they got to figure out, gosh, how do we make sure that we jump to O.J.'s defense or at least show sympathy for O.J. Simpson and his family, but not some of the other more prominent tragedies that have taken place. And those are actual tragedies. Diller and Riley, those are actual tragedies. The O.J. Simpson story is tragic in the sense of what happened to Nicole Brown and Rod Goldman was tragic. His story is one of tragedy. It's one of a, incredible fall from grace. But it's not tragic in the sense of O.J. Simpson dying from cancer at the age of 76 is not really tragic. His life is a tragedy. But they were very quick to say something on this front. And I just, even by their standard, I was sitting there and I was saying to myself, wow, there really is just no level that's too low, apparently. There isn't. Now, yesterday, I was consuming as much of this content on OJ as I could, and I kind of, geeked out on it a little bit. And there was something, Mark and I were young at the time. We were talking about this at the end of yesterday's show. But there was something that stood out to me as I was going back and reading through some of the archives. This from the L.A. Times in late 1995. I just stumbled upon this. And it talked about how the venue change in the O.J. Simpson case may have ultimately made all the difference in the world. They're right here. All attorneys, or certainly all litigation attorneys, know that the most important part of a case and the threshold issue is attempting to obtain a judge or jury who will give you at least a chance of winning the case. In the O.J. Simpson murder trial, there was zero chance for the prosecution to prevail in a downtown Los Angeles courtroom. Now remember, the murder didn't happen in the downtown Los Angeles area. Brentwood, Santa Monica is where it took place, and the case was not tried there. The LA Times writes here in 95, the deputies, in particular, Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, did a very good job, but they were dealt a losing hand. If the case had been tried in Santa Monica or many other judicial districts, the prosecution would have had an excellent chance of winning. The LA Times writes here, I wonder why and what District Attorney Gil Garcetti was thinking when he filed the case in downtown Los Angeles, when in fact the murders took place in the Santa Monica Judicial District. If Garcetti would have been criticized by the black community for trying the case in Santa Monica because the defendant was black, don't the victims' families have any rights to see the case tried and adjudicated where the crimes actually took place? And once the venue was changed, why were 10 challenges unexercised, which could have been used to try to get more white, Asian, or Latinos on the jury? Was that a Garcetti political decision, too? The prosecution was warned by its own jury consultant that some of the jurors selected seemed hopelessly biased in Simpson's favor. And that's exactly right. Take a listen to this. This is a juror in a documentary that was done over the last few years, basically admitting that acquitting O.J. Simpson was revenge for Rodney King, the young man who was beaten by multiple LAPD back in 92, and all those cops involved in that beating of Rodney King were acquitted. Take a listen to this juror.
Do you think that they're members of the jury that voted to acquit O.J. because of Rodney King?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
How many of you think felt that way?
Oh, probably 90% of us.
90%? Did you feel that way?
Yes.
That was payback.
Uh-huh.
You think that's right?
And at the end, she kind of just shrugs and says, is that right? Just kind of shrugs her shoulders. If you think back to how we got to where we are today and the way that race relations were on a positive trajectory for decades throughout the 20th century, and how things started to, unfortunately, rapidly turn a corner. You can point back to Rodney King. You can look then to the O.J. Simpson trial. You can fast forward to, of course, cases like Trayvon Martin. You can fast forward to, Ferguson, Missouri. You can fast forward to George Floyd, and you can talk about the politicians and the grifters and the hucksters that have tried to do nothing but divide us over the last 30 to 40 years, and it's been good for business. But the more that I did, reading and geeking out and getting back into some of the details yesterday, the more I thought the O.J. Simpson trial and the way O.J. Simpson and his defense team exploited those race relations should not be forgotten in the history of racial divide in this country. 913-408-7957. We are still actively working on getting some great guests this morning here for you on KCMO. I reached out to, a lot of people that have been heavily involved in the trial, covered it, involved in the case, and we got some good feelers out there that we're hoping are going to land at some point this morning for you here on KCMO 95.7 FM. In the meantime, it's a busy morning. There's a lot going on, including if you're in Brookside. Maybe park that car in the garage, because you are dealing with a bunch of break-ins right now. And I can't say I'm all that surprised. We'll get to it here on KCMO Talk Radio. What's happening, John?
Break-ins and power lines. A couple of power lines went down on cars in Brookside, so yikes.
I know. I'm feeling it's a busy time right now in Brookside for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So let's get to the latest on this story, where we're at with that, and what you need to be doing here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. I also had the chance last night to MC the Kansans for Life annual banquet that was at the Overland Park Convention Center. Seth Dillon was the keynote speaker, and if you think you know the name but wonder what you know it from, He is the CEO of the Babylon Bee, which is just, absolutely hysterical. They had their lead story last night was O.J. Simpson excited for God to tell him who the real killer was. That's the lead story last night on the Babylon Bee. Satirical website. They write here, O.J. Simpson's passed away from cancer at the age of 76. According to sources from the afterlife, the former football star is looking forward to asking God who really killed his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson. Simpson said, quote, I've been racking my brains for decades trying to figure out who may have done it. It'll be great to have all my questions finally laid to rest. I really can't imagine who might have committed such a crime. At publishing time, O.J. Simpson's questions unfortunately remained unanswered after a majority black jury declared him not dead. Okay.
How dare you?
That's from the Babylon Bee last night. So Seth Dillon was really good and was very entertaining. And overall, they always put on a great event there with Kansans for Life. So it was good to meet him. A guy who's had a lot of entrepreneurial success beyond the Babylon Bee, and he's just one of those guys who is very, very compelling. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. So I want to just get into this in Brookside. This was from KMBC, Channel 9, last night. They did a story. Now, listen, I think there should be more stories like this by the local news. First off, the data from the KCPD shows nearly 800 car break-ins in Kansas City through the first 3 months of this year. 800 car break-ins. That means we're on pace for over 3,000 car break-ins this year, 3,200 to be exact. And now you've got places like Brookside getting hit pretty hard, and some of you on the text line are noting Waldo is also getting hit pretty hard. So I want to play the clip from Channel 9 KMBC and then get to you.
I came out and I looked and I saw glass just shattered all over the back seat, and I went running in and yelled at my husband. Someone broke into the vehicle.
The thieves didn't get much from Caitlin Nolan's SUV, and she got these photos of the aftermath as souvenirs. That and a nearly $800 bill to repair the windows.
It makes you kind of question the decisions that you make, and it just makes you uneasy feeling is really what it comes down to. I was up literally all night last night just looking out the window like, are they coming back today?
Her neighbor 2 doors up,
when leaving for work, I figured out that my car window was broken.
had the same fate.
Frustrating, to say the least, because insurance are not covering enough for us, so it's money out of pocket.
So that's Channel 9 KMBC last night. And, listen, as some of you are noting right now on the text line, I'm reading these, and some of you are just saying, hey, Pete, I live in Brookside. The car break-ins happen all the time. My girlfriend got her car stolen in front of my house a couple of years ago. Can somebody explain this to me when it comes to Brookside? I know where the hearts are at in Brookside. And it's fine if you guys are not seeing the world the same way I do. It's fine. But can we agree on something? Like, leave national politics out of the conversation here. Can we agree on something? That Kansas City is not being run well, generally speaking, right now. The prosecutor's office is a mess. There's no jail. And the people in charge are not talking about these core key issues. And as a result, you're living in Brookside, beautiful part of town. Homes are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you might pull out this morning, look out your front door, and see your windows broken into, John.
I had a car stolen from, Waldo.
Did you?
Back in the day. It's been a while back, yeah. But on my street last night, a car was stolen.
Is that right?
Right. So I don't know the Brookside's got any. I mean, this is widespread across the area when you see those numbers, right?
Yeah.
800 in this first quarter.
And you are in Jackson County.
I
you
am
are
indeed.
a Jackson
I'm not
County
in Kansas
resident.
City, Missouri, but I'm close enough to spit into it.
Yeah. No, it's like...
It's right there. So it affects even south further.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, okay, the crime, there's a trickle-down effect with crime, I believe, where if you're a criminal and you see hardened criminals, people who are going to commit heinous acts of violence in this town, and you see them get slapped on the wrist. You see them not get caught. You see them get let off the hook. Well, doesn't that inherently embolden some of your lower level criminals who are just, and I, use that word facetiously, who are just doing things like, stealing cars, breaking into your vehicle, seeing if they can, take anything from your car of value. Did you accidentally leave your wallet in your car overnight? Smash the window, and if there's nothing there, whatever, I'm moving on. Not going to get caught anyway. Like, at what point do folks in Brookside and Waldo and, all parts of Kansas City, Missouri, but especially some of those places where you're paying a pretty penny for your home and you got to deal with more of that crap than, somebody, not that it's not happening in Overland Park or Lenexa or Prairie Village, but it's less likely to happen in some of those places. But you're paying, top dollar in some cases to live in those old, beautiful neighborhoods. When do you say enough's enough? And when do you start holding some of these folks accountable? The text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I called the police a couple of weeks back. They didn't even show up since it was a non-emergency and somebody was parked in my driveway. I mean, that's the kind of thing that's happening right now in Kansas City, Missouri. They don't have the bodies. They don't have the cops. And you call the police and no one's even showing up. What are you paying taxes for in this town right now? You live in Brookside. You theoretically never really need the police, God willing. And the one time you do, you can't get anyone to show up to your front door. Literally, what are you paying for, John? You're not paying for good roads. I can tell you that right now.
It's tough, right? Once the car's gone, it's gone. Calling the cops and having them show up. I mean, you can give a report, right?
Yes.
I've had 3 cars stolen in this town in my life. All of them have been recovered within about 24 hours.
That's pretty good.
Enough, yeah. They're down city tow lot. They're not drivable, that kind of stuff. My neighbor's car, they got it back. It's totaled.
Yeah.
So, oddly enough, I mean, my experience has been that the law enforcement, it does, at least they can find it sometimes. These Kias that are getting stolen, my son had his taken twice.
Wow.
They've gotten it back both times.
Wow, that's pretty good, though.
So, unfortunately, once it's gone, you can only hope maybe you get it back in some of the parts.
Well, the Anthony household has a good track record of getting their cars stolen and getting them back, which is pretty good.
Knock on wood, I'll take that disadvantage, misfortune against other things that could happen.
That is true. 913-408-7957 on a Friday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. All right, we just locked this down for 8:30 this morning. Eric Shawn, Fox News reporter, and he covered the O.J. Simpson trial extensively. He's going to be here at 8:30 this morning. Just locked this in, and he told an incredible story yesterday with our good friend Harris Faulkner. And it's just about the autopsy that people did not see of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. And you're not going to want to miss that. Just got clarification and confirmation of that for 8:30 this morning. Eric Shawn, Fox News reporter who was all over the O.J. Simpson case. And in a half hour, I will play for you the most hysterical prank call from the night of the white Bronco chase to Peter Jennings on ABC News. I was going deep into YouTube yesterday, and I stumbled upon this, and it is just freaking hysterical. Peter Jennings getting pranked while the white Bronco chase is going on. It's unreal. So we'll have that in a half hour at 7:20. Don't miss it here on KCMO. Last night, I had the opportunity to MC the Kansans for Life event with Seth Dillon, who's the CEO of Babylon Bee. And they're just hysterical. You want to laugh, just go to BabylonBee.com. You'll see all the headlines you want, like this one. O.J. Simpson excited for God to tell him who the real killer was. They also have this headline, New Biden Diet Sweeps Nation. Pay the same amount of money, but eat 50% less food. So they've got it all on lockdown at the Babylon Bee. And, listen, Seth Dillon is a pro-life guy, obviously. That's why he's speaking at this event. And he laid out the argument intelligently with a dose of humor as well, which you need in this insane world. I was listening to somebody yesterday filling in for Mark Levin. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, Mark's a yeller, Mark's a screamer. Mark is certainly someone who gets bent out of shape pretty easily. But his fill-in guy, I mean, made Mark come off like he was Santa Claus. I'm like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot to be annoyed with right now in the world. There's a lot to be angry with and bothered by in the world. But humor is a great way to deliver a message and share a message and bring some levity to, yes, very serious issues and very serious things. But you can't be angry all the time. You just can't. I mean, we can all get worked up over things and, fly off the handles, and that happens to the best of us. Certainly, I'll include myself in that. But, man, I'm telling you, if you can disarm people with a little bit of humor, have a little bit of a twinkle in your eyes, you deliver it, we would be much better off as a country, as a movement, as a culture. So Seth Dillon did that brilliantly last night. And when I got home, I was, scrolling through social media. It's late and putting together the show for the day. And I was looking for something from the president just on his Twitter page, on his social media pages. And I looked through and I saw that Joe Biden had 9 tweets up over the last couple of days. 6 of Joe Biden's tweets were tied to the issue of abortion. 6 of his most recent 9 tweets were related to abortion. And as I was rolling through all of these, I mean, it's just all the stuff you'd expect, right? Here's one. When Donald Trump ripped away Roe v. Wade, he ripped away a fundamental right granted to you as an American. It didn't matter where you lived. If you give me and Vice President Harris a Democratic Congress, we will ensure the fundamental right to choose for women will be restored as the law of the land. So 6 of his last 9 tweets tied to abortion. That's all he's got. That's it. That is the extent of his sales pitch this year. Abortion. And when you think about a guy who's been in office for, 3.5 years now, you think, gosh, you'd think there'd be something else. You think that, there's got to be something else for you to talk about for why people should reelect you, right? Something? Bueller? Anybody? No, there really isn't. He's failed so miserably that all he can do is double down on this issue. And by the way, he's in part able to double down on the issue because Republicans are just terrible at messaging around the issue. They're passionate about it, but they're afraid of it, and they kind of beat around the bush, and they don't really want to take responsibility for how they feel, so they lose the narrative. And then, of course, we know what the media does on that issue. The media cleans their clock with the issue, and then they get more scared. They get more gun-shy on talking about it and how to address it. And to think that we have a guy in the White House running for re-election and his biggest talking point, 6 of his last 9 tweets, his biggest issue is an issue that is really now a states' rights issue, tells me all I need to know about where this guy is at and where his campaign is really at. His campaign is sinking. It is floundering. And that is evident based on what he's talking about and also what he's not talking about. And that became incredibly clear as I was scrolling through his Twitter, which, of course, he's not sending out those tweets, last night at about 10 o'clock after the KFL agreement, which was absolutely outstanding, as it always is with that organization. Coming up, the greatest prank call you'll hear at 7:20 on the night O.J. Simpson's white Bronco chase was going on, and more next on KCMO. 7:05 on a Friday morning. We have made it to the end of the week. It is Masters Week. You got Messi in town this weekend, and there's a lot happening right now. But the shocker came at the end of the show yesterday, and that is the death of O.J. Simpson, 76 years old, passing away from cancer. So as I'm digging into the archives and I'm going through, various old YouTube clips yesterday, I find this news montage from 1992. It's from CBS. And It's a clip of a reporter, her name, Linda Breakstone. She was a national reporter with CBS at the time, and I actually reached out to Linda trying to get her on the show. I was able to track her down, but have not heard back yet. Looks like she's living a good life out there in Malibu. So anyway, she is there, and she's on the scene of the Rodney King riots. And, of course, you know, the damage that caused to Los Angeles at that time, the lives lost. You had dozens of people dying over, a couple of days span. It was just ugly all around. And it was tying back to Rodney King, who was beaten by a bunch of LAPD officers. And then those LAPD officers were charged, but ultimately were not convicted. So the riots were sparked by the outrage, of course, that you had amongst mostly black Los Angeles residents. And this was kind of the culmination of longstanding social issues. You had the tensions at the time between not just the African-American and the white community, but also the Korean community was heavily involved in that as well.
Mm-hmm. That was Reginald Denny mentioned there. I think that's the name of the truck driver. He was driving a truck through there, and they pulled him out of the truck as part of the protest and riot, too. So,
yes.
Another incident involved with that.
A white truck driver who was just wrong place, wrong time during those riots. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he was, that 6-day span killed 63 people, 2,400 injured. And it only ended after the California Army National Guard, the Army, and the Marine Corps basically came in and brought peace. So that predates, obviously, the O.J. Simpson trial. But I was watching some of the coverage from 92, and I want to play this clip from this protester on CBS. And boy, it just sounds eerily reminiscent of things we were hearing in this country just a few years ago.
I feel that it's a great travesty of justice. I feel that the jury in Simi Valley gave the okay to continue to abuse and oppress and suppress black people in this country. I feel that there is an undercurrent of racism and that the system is rotten to the core. And I couldn't sit in my home and just watch it on television. I had to come here and let my voice be heard.
I listened to that clip, and it sounded to me like that could have been a clip from the summer of love, the summer of 2020, post-George Floyd. Literally verbatim. You take it word for word, and that could have been somebody down on the plaza, in that late May, early June time period here in Kansas City. That's what it's like. The script was there, and they just took the script from 92 and they applied it to 2020. I was blown away. Now, remember, I'm speaking to this as someone who was young during the O.J. Simpson trial, but likes to historically put this all together as best I can. So you predate the O.J. Simpson trial with this Rodney King situation and the riots that took place. And then, less than 3 years later, O.J.'s on trial for the murder of his ex-wife and her lover, Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. And looking back on that, and this was one of the things that I went in the archives this morning and I was reading about, what did they do? What happened with the O.J. Simpson murder trial? Well, the case should have been in Santa Monica, the judicial district that, the murder took place in, but it was moved to downtown Los Angeles in a downtown L.A. courtroom. And this is, still with the Rodney King riots fresh on the minds of many jurors and just many people at large in that community. So as I was thinking about it and just rehashing all the O.J. stuff yesterday and last night, I thought to myself, if O.J. Simpson had done this anywhere else in the country, if he was not living where he was, if Rodney King had not been a thing in 92, would O.J. Simpson have spent the bulk of the last 30 years as a free man? Now, we know he spent time in prison for the robbery stuff, but I'm saying, would he have gotten off the hook as a murderer? Very unlikely. Very unlikely. And that's where sometimes these things just perfectly come together. And these moments of history, when you're living through them, you don't really realize how things perfectly came together. Even, the George Floyd stuff, right? With COVID going on, with it being an election year, Does that end up being the story that it is and that it was had we not had COVID, election year, Trump, Biden, all those other factors that played into the chaos of the time? Probably not. Would O.J. Simpson have been a free man had it not been for Rodney King? Had the trial not ended up moving to downtown Los Angeles instead of being in Santa Monica? Probably not. And when you look back on that time, man, it is fascinating historically. Mark was telling me this morning, I'm watching old YouTube clips. Mark's pulling up Netflix documentaries to rehash his memory of that time. Which one was it there, Mark, that you were pulling up?
The O.J. Simpson Made in America, the ESPN documentary.
Is that the one with Cuba Gooding Jr. or no?
No, that was the live.
Okay.
One,
It was So you're talking about the one that was like live footage from the courtroom and that's the good one.
Yeah.
That's the one that if you haven't seen and you want to rehash that, that's the one to watch for sure.
Good interviews with the jurors and everything like that.
Yes, that's exactly the one that you want to be checking out. 913-408-7957. Let's check in with Wes. He's in Gladstone. He was in Southern California during the O.J. trials. Wes, good morning.
Yeah, hey, Pete. I'm working in Irvine, California, right?
Yeah.
And just like you said, the Rodney King riots in '92 were very bad, right? So that had just happened. There had been a bunch of mudslides in California. People's homes were being foreclosed on. You'd open up the paper on Sunday, and it was just page after page of all these foreclosures. So it was a really weird time in California. So I'm working in this office. There's probably like 1,000 people at this company, right? I remember them putting on the loudspeakers and people coming out in the halls to listen to the verdict. And everybody was freaked out, man, because they were afraid that if he was found guilty, L.A. was going to go up in smoke again, man. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. But just kind of background, he was a hero of mine. He was a sports hero of mine, right?
Yeah.
He won the Heisman when I was 10 years old. You don't remember the Hertz commercials.
No.
He was on TV. He was in movies. He was a beloved figure. I'll never forget where I was during the white Bronco chase, man. It was like, it was like, what the hell is going on here? And as far as the trial goes, you got to remember Johnny Cochran, who I nicknamed Johnny Cockroach, but you got to remember, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Yeah. Absolutely, Wes, great stuff. I was also reading some things about Cochran this morning, and he basically baited the prosecution into letting O.J. try the glove on. And then O.J., with these gloves that have, been frozen, they had blood on them, they're probably smaller than they were, and O.J.'s a great actor. And he gets up there and he's, trying to yank him over there and everything like that, John.
I gave you my pet theory. In the initial weeks when they put him in jail, they said, well, he just asked for some simple exercise equipment. Of course, you give those hand grip squeezer things. You work on those for a couple weeks, and bada bing, the gloves don't fit. You're a glove size bigger now.
Yeah. That's part of the conversation as well. Victor's on KCMO. Hey, Victor, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. Yeah, I was actually living through all this. I was actually a switchboard operator, volunteer switchboard operator, KLOS Radio during the second Rodney King trial.
So you were at KLOS Radio during the Rodney King trial?
During the second Rodney King trial.
Okay.
I was there during the first Rodney King trial and watched L.A. burn, and it's very similar to George Floyd, where they put him out as, oh, he's just some innocent guy. He's this, he's that. He was just driving around San Fernando. No, he was driving over 75, 90 miles an hour through a residential area. They pulled him over. They hooked him up to 2 tasers. They had 100,000 volts going through this guy. He was well over 6 foot, over 250 pounds, and he was still taunting them. And at the time, I was working with a guy who was a retired police sergeant, and he said when they took the chokehold away from LAPD, The standard operating procedure was you beat them till they submit. So that's all the LAPD could do.
Mm-hmm.
They just sat there and just hit them with the batons. And the CHP officer, Melanie Singer, who actually testified against LAPD, they're trained to actually shoot to subdue. She pulled her weapon. They told her to put it away. So there was a lot leading into that. He was all hyped up on angel dust and everything else. Rodney King was no great shakes, and he was in all sorts of trouble after the trial as well. So the same as that parallels the Floyd issue.
Yeah.
But as far as the O.J. Simpson trial goes, I agree with you. The change of venue was definitely strategic in that. Chris Darden did an excellent book on that, where Marcia Clark, she spent way too much trying to explain DNA evidence. You could see the deer in the headlights of the jury. They lost them. And then there was just a whole bunch of stuff that went along with that. The cops were over there all the time for domestic violence. Plus, he donated a lot of time and effort to the Los Angeles Police Department for charity events. So they really had no bone to pick with him. He was more of a benefit to them than anything else, which was the shocker.
Yeah.
And, there was Mark Furman saved the life of a homeless black guy several months beforehand. So this and the tapes that were out about him being a racist, that was for some book thing. If people want to delve into this, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
I love Victor. I love all the California transplants checking in with us this morning on KCMO from the 90s. That's great. Coming up, the greatest prank call in the history of prank calls took place the night of the White Bronco chase to Peter Jennings. I dug it up on YouTube. I will share it next. It's hysterical. Don't miss it on KCMO. All right. This is back the night of the White Bronco chase. Let's go back to that day. And, I was too young to remember it. Mark remembers he was watching the NBA Finals.
Knicks Rockets.
Yeah, that's right. Knicks
Hakeem
Rockets.
the Dream.
Yeah.
Patrick Ewing.
And they interrupted because OJ's car is getting chased. And a man somehow gets through to Peter Jennings of ABC. And it was a prank call. But he insists that he's OJ's neighbor and he's watching things unfold outside of OJ's house. Now, take a listen to this. This is a minute. I'm going to play a minute of this call to ABC News and Peter Jennings that night. And I'm pretty sure you'll be able to tell within 5 seconds that this is clearly a prank call based on the cartoonishly racist dialect that you will hear here.
We have on the phone with us as well Robert Higgins, who lives in the neighborhood and is on the ground and can see inside the van. Mr. Higgins.
Yes, how are you?
Just about as tense as you are, sir.
Oh, my Lord, this is quite the tensest. Now, looky here, he looks very upset. I don't know what he's going to be doing.
Can you see him doing anything specific? Is he merely sitting there?
He is just sitting around, just looking like he'd be very nervous.
Can you hear anything, Mr. Higgins?
It's just too much commotion. I'd be in the back of a news van, so I can't really hear that good, but I can see it all. And I see OJ. Man, and he looks scared. And I would be scared because there's cops all deep in this.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
And Baba Booey to y'all.
The driveway of O.J. Simpson's home in Brentwood. Clearly an effort being made to have him come out of the vehicle.
So the backstory there, it was a Howard Stern listener who was pissed off that his Knicks were getting interrupted for the White Bronco chase. And he goes on, and I don't know how you get through multiple producers before Peter Jennings puts you on the air, and then how Peter Jennings, being the dopey robot that he is, within 5 seconds, realizes that is clearly a prank call. You could just tell that the second the guy gets on the air based on the dialect, that is a prank call, an all-time prank call. And in the middle of, one of the most memorable moments, arguably, the biggest TV moment of the entire century. Peter Jennings is putting a prank caller on the air saying, oh, yeah, I see OJ. Like, what are you doing, man? How does that happen? Oh, gosh. Now, you know who bailed out Peter Jennings after the fact? I don't have this part of the audio. But Al Michaels realized what was going on. And Al Michaels comes on the air with Peter Jennings after the fact. And, you know, he knew that that was clearly a prank caller. And he called out the prank caller. And Peter Jennings acted like, oh, whoops, we put a prank caller on the air during the, white Bronco chase. Bad on us. Like, that's embarrassing. And I did reach out to Al Michaels yesterday. I have a good friend who had a direct line to Al. And I called and I texted and I have not got anything back. So I don't know if, Al's a busy man. But I wanted to get Al on today to talk about that part of the story. Because not only did Al probably know OJ crossing paths in the sports broadcasting world, but Al Michaels is the guy who bailed out Peter Jennings after that prank call. And by the way, I posted the entire prank call on my X page. You can see it there at Pete Mundo if you want to go back and watch it, because that is just an all-time prank caller moment. It makes me jealous, frankly. We need some, we got to find someone who's going to prank Woke 41 when they're doing stupid stuff around town. I'm not sure how we'll do it, but I got to figure out a way to go about doing that, because that is something that needs to be done. Coming up, I just got this locked in. Randy Cross is going to be here coming up just after the news. Randy, of course, a guy who spent a lot of time in the NFL with the 49ers, three-time Super Bowl champion, had cross paths with O.J. Simpson on multiple occasions. So he is going to be here coming up right after the news on KCMO. We'll also get to your calls at 913-408-7957. I know some of you are wanting to chime in, some of you in Southern California at the time. So we'll do all that and much more coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And you can stream us, of course, on the KCMO Talk Radio app and at KCMOTalkRadio.com. So I think we can all agree on this on a Friday. I want the show to be as communal as possible every day. I want us all to agree on as much as possible every day. And I think we can all agree as we sit here in the 8 o'clock hour on a Friday. It's Masters weekend. It's going to be a beautiful day across Kansas City. First cousins shouldn't get married. We all on the same page? Okay. I'm getting a lot of head shaking in there. Good. I like that. Well, in Tennessee, a bill did pass. The Tennessee House that would make it illegal to marry your first cousin in the state. Believe it or not, there are still a handful of states where you can actually do this. Here are the states where you are allowed to marry your first cousin. Alabama.
Talk about a bombshell.
California, Colorado, Connecticut, Washington, D.C. The jokes write themselves.
Yeah.
Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, New Mexico, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont. We're not on the list. Good.
And I was going to note there's a standard joke about Kentuckians. And
Yeah.
they were not on that list.
I know.
So we need to retire that one.
We do. States where first cousin marriages are not allowed. I'm not going to read them all, but they do include Kentucky.
Yeah.
They include Kansas and Missouri.
All right.
So we're on the right side of this whole deal. Meantime, you go to Washington, D.C., where they think they're all hoity-toity, and they're marrying their cousins left and right. Go make sense of that, huh? All right. What do you got on us now, D.C.? Bunch of swamp rats. So anyway, this is a story that got picked up out of Tennessee, but it makes national news because, like, anytime a Republican does something really stupid, it becomes a national news story. It's kind of like crime, right? Local crime, black man shoots black man, not a story. White cop shoots black man, national story. Like, it just has to fit certain narratives for the media to make it a national story. Republican tries to stop first cousin marriages, boom, national story. Now, of course, anyone who's trying to block first cousins, or I guess block the prevention of first cousins getting married, is an imbecile and probably an inbred. But neither here nor there. This became a national story. So this bill passes the Tennessee House. but it was not unanimous. The bill, as amended by a representative, Gino Bulso, would prohibit first cousin marriage unless the parties to the marriage contract received counseling from a genetic counselor licensed by the Board of Medical Examiners. This representative argued during a session that the bill should be allowed to include same-sex marriages. He said the bill was introduced as a public health-related matter, adding the law needed to be passed to prevent cousins from getting married and conceiving a child that could have an increased risk of birth defects, right? So we know that that's obviously one of the many problems with marrying your cousin. Bulso also argued, though, that two men who are first cousins could get married without the risk of conceiving a child with birth defects. So he's basically saying that the whole point, or one of the main points, on not allowing cousins to get married is that it increases your chance of birth defects in children between 1.7 and 2.8%, according to the Journal of Genetic Counseling. But he's saying, hey, if it's two guys or it's two gals, if it's a gay couple or a lesbian couple, then what do we care? Because they can't conceive a child anyway. And, I mean, if you're trying to find the silver lining, it's not the worst point. Now, I still don't think we should live in a civilized society where cousins are getting married. Like, I everything about that is just very 14th century to me. However, this guy tries to find the silver lining. Now, I don't know if he's a gay man married to his cousin and that's why he's doing this. I don't know the answer. But I never would have guessed that somebody would have stood up and said, you know, we got this unanimous bill. All right, we're going to finally in Tennessee ban first cousins from marrying each other. Well, hold on a second now. Hold on a second. What if? Talk about a What If Wednesday question here. Mm-hmm. What if the whole purpose of banning cousins from marrying each other is to prevent birth defects, but if the two cousins are gay and they can't conceive anyway, then, you know, no harm, no foul. Leave it to some goober state representative to try to fight this and make it into a national story. And, of course, you've got a willing media being like, look, we found this random state representative here in Tennessee who wants to allow first cousins to get married if they're of the same sex. Like, what are we doing, man? That's how you know this is a story that would not have seen the light of day in any other state, but because the guy has an R next to his name and he's arguing against preventing first cousins from marrying each other, we got to sit here and we got to turn it into a national story because that's what they do. And they do it so damn well. It's like right on cue. He also went on to say that, and this is where his argument really just falls off a cliff. He said, marriage between first cousins should be legal. This guy, Representative Bulso in Tennessee, if they first receive a consultation from a genetic counselor. He said there's an additional risk to genetic issues, but it's not as significant as some might be led to believe. Man, we are not electing our best and brightest anymore. We haven't been for a long time.
Yeah, I think this story is illustrative of that point.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up, was it a guy in Missouri was talking about rape and women's bodies could shut that thing down.
Yes. Remember that idiot, too?
But I do also remember the genius that was worried about Guam tipping over the island.
Yeah. Oh, man, the Guam.
That was a Democrat one.
Yes, that
there.
was at the federal level.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that was, he's still in Congress, by the way.
All of these are
Hank
illustrative
Johnson.
points, yes.
Hank Johnson out of Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Illustrative examples of your points.
Yeah, we just, oh, man, we are really lacking some brains in these state houses. And obviously, we know about that in D.C., but we are lacking them in the state house as well, across the country. And you wonder how the country ends up where it is today. It's guys like this who are like, well, you know, these first cousins, if they end up conceiving, the odds aren't quite as high as you might think.
What if they didn't know they was cousins and they first met when they was like 20 or something?
Looking for the exceptions.
Oh, man, 913-40. Maybe I shouldn't take calls. I'm not even going to solicit calls on this. We're going to go way the heck off the deep end, John.
The Uncle Dad jokes are coming.
Yeah, you know what? Forget I gave out the phone number. Don't remember the phone number. John's blocking all the phones. Don't even bother. But I did, the story annoys me because of the way the media makes it national. But then I'm also like, where do these idiots come from? That they're sitting there at the state house arguing on behalf of first cousin marriages. Like, oh my goodness, where do we find these people? Thankfully, the bill is on the Tennessee governor's desk and will be signed, but it's not going to be unanimous because, well, old Billy boy there had to make sure his gay cousins could get married or his straight cousins could have a kid because the risk is only like 2 to 3%. What's the big deal? 2 to 3% chance of birth defects? Yeah, live and let live. That's how it goes.
We could quote Jim Carrey. Yeah. So you're saying there's a chance. 1 in a million. So you're saying there's a chance.
Oh, man. Bottom of the hour, Eric Shawn is going to be here, Fox News reporter. He shared yesterday a never-told story of the O.J. Simpson trial and seeing the autopsies of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, and how the public never saw it, but it could have dramatically changed that trial. Eric Shawn will be here at 8:35 on a Friday on KCMO Talk Radio. And next, Donnie wants a debate. He's calling for it. He did it yesterday. We'll play the audio next on KCMO. It's 8:20 on a beautiful Friday morning across Kansas City. It's good to be here on KCMO. Tiger Woods walking up the 18th hole from his first round at Augusta. Winds are whipping pretty good still there, 10 to 15 miles an hour. Tiger's dropped a stroke. He's sitting there at even par. And, gosh, this is, when I go to heaven, or if, I don't want to be, arrogant about it. If I make it, I'll leave it at that. If a day in heaven looks like this, sitting here on a beautiful day in the heartland of America, getting to do a show like this, talk with you, have conversations with you, weather pristine, as I watch Masters golf, I'll be doing pretty well. That's all I need, Mark.
And Royals and Mets tonight.
Well, that still has some, that's still a sore spot for me. I think back to 2015 and where I was. I was working in New York at Fox at the time, and I was sitting in my bed. Matt Harvey comes out for the top of the 9th inning, Game 5. Citi Field's going electric, and then the whole thing falls apart on him. So it's going to be a little tough for me tonight to watch that. But, hey, I'm fired up for the Royals, man, coming off that sweep. Life is good right now. Life is real good. So life is also good for Donald Trump. He's feeling good about himself. He's feeling good about the polls, and he wants to get on a debate stage with Joe Biden. He put out this video yesterday. Let's roll it. Here was Donnie calling for Big Joe to size him up, man him up on the debate stage.
It's time for Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, and I to debate. We have to talk about what he's doing and where we're going. We owe it to our country. We owe it to all Americans. Anytime, anywhere, anyplace.
All right, that was Donald Trump yesterday on his Truth Social saying, all right, Joe, time to come out of the basement. Let's get to work here. Let's have a debate. Well, the Biden team doesn't want to do it. And they're hiding behind the whole, Donald Trump's going to tell too many lies. Oh, no one can control that guy. He's going to start lying to people. Dude.
I think that, that ship already sailed?
Yeah.
Talking about lying coming out of.
Yeah. It's awfully ironic coming out of his mouth.
Horses out of the barn?
Yeah. You ain't kidding. Now, do I think they should debate? Absolutely. Do I think that Donald Trump lost a little bit of his argument by not debating in the primaries? Absolutely. Donald Trump didn't want to debate Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and the others. And his attitude was, hey, I'm winning. I don't want to debate. That's his prerogative. But he didn't want to get up there. He had his reasons for it, but I thought he should have gotten up on that debate stage. First off, that's when he's in his element. That's when he's good. It's when he's sometimes at his best, right? The humor, the charm, everything else is on full display when Trump's on the debate stage. That's what got him elected back in 2016. So I understand he didn't want to make it seem like he had any competition, but I think he lost part of his argument when he did not step on those debate stages against his primary opponents. Didn't want to do it. I thought the Republican voter deserved a chance to see people debate their ideas and debate their policies and debate what they have done for their states and their countries. The country. And he chose not to. Now, it's a little bit different here. Just a little. I understand you might sit there and you might say, well, hold on a second. He was up by 20, 30 points. We've now got a neck-and-neck general election. It's a very different scenario. And that's a fine argument to make. But here's why I don't buy it. Because you either believe in debates, you believe in that being part of the process for the American people to get up there and decide what they want and who they want, or you don't. You don't get to cherry pick scenarios where and when you want to debate. You either believe that debates are good things for voters or you don't. You don't get to say, yeah, but I'm up 30 points, so therefore I don't have to debate or I don't want to debate. Last I checked, it doesn't matter if you're up 30, 40, 50, 60. You either believe in the importance of them or you don't. And if you don't, that's okay, but then you lose some of your argument when you sit there and you say, where's Pops to get on stage with me? Can't have it both ways. And my fear is that Joe Biden is going to use that to his advantage. Now, what we do know, and this is good, is that the TV networks are sending a letter to both campaigns basically begging them to debate. Yes, it's selfish in part because they're going to make a lot of money off of the debate. That's absolutely true. There'll be, probably more people will watch a debate between Trump and Biden than will watch anything outside of a Super Bowl. Nothing will come close. It'll get, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the ratings. But I think Trump and Hillary were doing, on some big nights, they were doing like 80 million viewers. The last election didn't do quite as well for various reasons. But still, you're going to get tens of millions of people to tune into a debate between these two guys this fall. The TV networks want that for their own sakes, yes. But I think it's also important to not end what has been a staple in presidential politics going back to 1976, and that is televised debates. And the other part of this, the other reason we should all want a debate, Republican, Democrat, if these guys don't debate, it's going to continue what I think is a pretty pathetic trend in more local politics, and that is people not debating. You're not getting, like, the Missouri Republican gubernatorial candidates, they are not debating, as far as I know. They had a little forum at the State Lincoln Days here in Kansas City back in February, but that's it. I mean, like a real debate. Get them on stage, go back and forth, exchange ideas. Nobody wants to do it anymore. Why not? Two reasons. One, the candidates are weaker than ever. They've got less confidence and less substance than ever. And on top of that, the consulting class doesn't want them to debate. They've convinced them that if they just give them all the power and give them all the money, they don't need to debate. Debates are worthless. The downside is greater than the upside, so screw it. Just give us your money and we'll help get you elected. So when you combine the fact that candidates have less depth and less substance than they've ever had, because half of them just want to be famous on Instagram, and you have a consulting class that's making more money than ever before, you get this awful, awful scenario where debates are not happening at the local level all the way up to the presidential level potentially. And that is a disservice to the voters.